very good afternoon to our viewers from across the world. My name is Richard Chiza, your host on the agenda at Museum TV. We are coming to you live on newzimbabwe.com. That's our Facebook page. Our Twitter page is at newzimbabwe.com. We also have a publication online, www.newzimbabwe.com. So this is the agenda is previously advertised, and we would want to, from the outset, to apologize to our viewers for the delay. It was due to circumstances beyond our control. But we come to you now, and as promised, we have a philanthropist, a business person, and a social commentator in our country. His name, Dr Shingi Munyeza. Dr Shingi Munyeza is a businessman of repute, like I indicated, and also ordinarily comments on the politics of the country. So we wanted to talk to him about his appreciation as a businessman, as a business practitioner in Zimbabwe, about his appreciation of the situation in Zimbabwe since the coming in of the new dispensation. Dr. Munyeza, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Richard.
Yeah.
And greetings to your viewers.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I read from one of your tweets, you say, I love my family, I love Jesus, I love my country, and want to leave my world a better place than I found it.
Yes.
That's very profound.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you find it that way.
Tell us about that. It speaks to the person that you are, right?
Yeah, basically, I think that I will not be muzzled in a situation where things must be dealt with, handled, but also I will not leave anything that is at my disposal to make sure that I bring about a change. And that change is based on what I can contribute, rather than a lot of people in this country, generally speaking, is that we love to comment, we love to talk, but very few doers out there. So I like to say, what is the issue? What am I able to do?
Okay, what are you able to do? 2017, Zimbabwe went through what one would call a metamorphosis, some kind of change. Has it been enough? Where are we? Where do you think we are now as a business person, as a business practitioner yourself in Zimbabwe? How has the situation and the environment been like?
Well, I think we, like I always would say, that we are not yet Uhuru, and as a people we're still trying to discover what really our emancipation would be. We had gone through a period of, injustice, period of lack of rights, freedoms, period of economic meltdown, period of oppression, so to speak. But 2017 gave us the hope that that period could be over. But I must hasten to say that that hope has been dashed by a few things that have happened. The election, the post-election violence, so to speak, and also the disputed election result, the events of January this year, and the ongoing economic struggle that we find ourselves in, and also the lack of, in some cases, political will to deal with our chronic issues.
Do you think we missed a chance? Do you think our political leaders missed a chance after November 2017?
Yeah, in some ways one should be pragmatic to say yes, there were certain areas that we missed the opportunity to galvanize, to gather, to unite the people of Zimbabwe. Now we are just as divided and as toxic as we were before November 2017. However, I think that there is still an opportunity to salvage something, and maybe that's a conversation we need to have.
And is there willingness, as you see it, on the part of our political leaders, that willingness, that little bit of willingness to tackle these issues, or to get their hands onto the wheel and say, let's rally behind this kind of thing?
Well, in a space and an environment where confidence and credibility is kind of dashed or lost, I don't think that you can no longer gauge willingness by what I say, Richard. So look, I'm very willing. Willingness now is gauged by fruit of what one is doing. So I think I still want to see that fruit, just like any Zimbabwean wants to see change that is not only spoken about, but that is felt, and that there is fruit that is out there. So I don't think that I want to say is their willingness. I want to start seeing the fruit.
Would I be correct to suggest that Zimbabwe's problems are always surrounded around or are always hinged around the legitimacy question, legitimacy of successive governments?
I think so, in many ways, that we are always in an electioneering mode. And I wish that we could move away from elections. But the reason why we get very animated and excited about elections, it's a good thing, it's a democratic process. But I think we have now gone overboard in always, when an election is finished, we're looking at the next one. There must be time to reflect, to develop, as well as to unite each other for a common purpose which is not driven by elections. So yes, Zimbabweans generally at the moment are doing that. However, one of the things is that we have given preeminence to politicians and politics, who have really taken us for a ride in many ways. And therefore we still expect them to deliver Uhuru to us. And I just don't understand how that is going to happen when we have the same players carrying on all the time. We need to actually just move away from giving too much importance, too much expectation on political leaders. Zimbabwe is not just about political leaders. It is all leaders and it is all citizens. And unfortunately, the culture of personality cults continuously drives us towards an expectation that we must have one Messiah. So we always are looking for an individual, not looking at all of us playing our part to bring about a change.
As a cleric yourself, as a pastor, as a Christian, do you think the church has taken its position in our society and claimed its position in the discourse around our society?
Well, I think so. When you look at the latest researches that were done before elections, who do people really respond to for authority and guidance? You found that the church leadership was way out there.
Okay.
Yeah, about 67%, way up there. So yes, they have. And just it means that we need to be more responsible in how we lead and in how we engage, and make sure that it is inclusive and that doesn't just include just people who are Christians. So yes, the church has taken center stage at this point and can't be ignored.
Was after last year's election, the run-up to the elections, it was said, according to commentators, it was one of the best environments that we have ever had in this country in the run-up to an election. And despite then it was bloated, like you say, by 1 August and then January 17. Do you think there was, going back to last year, was there enough reason why the election result should have been challenged?
The nature of contestation is always to look at what will lead to a disputed result. I'm very disappointed with, well, primarily with our political leaders, that they drove the whole nation into a contestation which did not depict a level playing ground. As we talk today, we still are looking at leveling or aligning the electoral laws in their entirety. And I think that was the biggest mistake. The biggest mistake was to go into an election which had no alignment of the laws to the Constitution.
What should we have done after 2017, after November?
To be honest, whether we delayed it or we fast-tracked the alignment, that's what should have happened. Because right now, it will still cause the contestation. So what I expect from our political leaders and government at large is to make sure that we align those, and then we test it by what might be happening, maybe some by-elections that are happening, whether this is all compliant. Now, when all the political players, the major political, decided that, well, let's just go for it and let's hope for the best. And the best didn't come out, and there was a contested result. So that's number one. and also the fact that there was no real perception that the result would be dealt with independently, and there was no mechanism that was put in place which was a buy-in by all political parties. It was going to be a contested result.
Are we ever going to have that?
I think we can. I'm very confident that we can get there if we all put our foot down and make sure that we have our laws are aligned to our constitution, and that there is enough checks and balances. So it means we might have to delay certain events of elections.
I'll take you back to March 2017. March 2017, you indicated and you posted on your Facebook page that opposition party is expecting the PF or the political leaders in power at that time to align themselves out of power. That's how you put it. To align themselves or reform themselves out of power, as it were, are expecting too much, and they have to go into an election under an uneven playing field. Why do you think it should change now?
No, the background to that posting that I did was that I didn't find any traction in the opposition that was saying we will not go into this election until the laws are aligned. That means they had to up their scale, their lobbying, their energies, their political interventions to make sure that there was such. But it was lackluster approach to make sure. I know that there were moves like for NERA and so on, but that died. Towards the last 12 months of the election, the whole push was weakened at some point, and then they were dissipated. They then went their own ways, and then everybody was now thinking, well, we could do this without laws aligned. I think that can, as much as there are some things that we thought could never be done, that can be done.
Just to acknowledge our viewers, we have Talita TC Dube, you are always with us. Nomalanga Juayo, Mamo Sile Giorgio asks Dr. Shingi Munyeza. He says, Shingi, you said truly was the best thing ever to happen in Zimbabwe. What has happened to him?
Yeah, the issue is that we have an economic meltdown for 40 years. And until you understand how our economy is wired and how it has been messed up, you do not expect it to be changed in 6 months or 12 months. It has been destroyed over a period of 40 years. So we have to understand that we need to go through a process of getting out of that hole that we're digging in.
Do you think
well, for example, in the past 10 years,
yeah.
we have never had a budget surplus from government. Mm-hmm. And we've just started having that. Whether people agree with the methods that are being used or not, but the result is that we're no longer printing treasury bills, which was the habit that started before actually, that habit started in the GNU.
It did?
Yeah. So that habit has just stopped. So certain things will take a little longer.
But I thought there are still companies that are owed money for treasury bills that were paid by government or printed by government in the 90s, late 90s, 97.
I understand. So you are actually agreeing with me.
Yeah, I do.
We dug a big hole.
Of course, we dug
a big hole. We messed up big. The government of the day was reckless and so on and so forth. And more so, even post-November 2017, there was a reckless printing of treasury bills. So we got to fix that. Now, if we don't fix those issues, and we think that they must be fixed within 30 days, this was a cancer at stage 2 or 3. And the chemotherapy process has to take a little longer than we do. So at the end of the day, I don't want to have a conversation of personalities here.
True.
I need to have a conversation of principles that when things have gone bad, even in your own home, when the relationships in the house have not worked for 40 years, and you're now expecting that it must be fixed, but you must say to yourself, do we have enough tools to start fixing it? And that is the conversation.
But do we have those tools now? Let's talk about the tools.
Do we have this? Yeah, the tools we have, first and foremost, we need political will. At some point, there was an impression that there was a collective political will that was going to come through. I think that kind of subsided in many ways. We now have to reignite this because of the events that have happened in the past 12 months, more so maybe in the past 9 months. That needs to be handled and dealt with. the political will for me is demonstrated by the discipline that political or government leaders must show towards corruption. Now, that has not even been scratched. Corruption has to be dealt with. And it can't be dealt with by tinkering on the edges with all sorts of irrelevant and completely insignificant situations or people involved. It has to start right at the executive level. The way of doing business, how it's being done, who does what, the past. Everybody has to come out in the open and say, look, we draw the line in the sand, no more of this. Now, corruption is still rife. So that is one. The second one is the desire to deal with all the economic malfunctioning and also the restructuring of our economy to be productive driven, to be export driven, and as well as to create new jobs and also give service delivery to the common person, to the citizen, to its own citizen. So those are things that one watches and say, look, are we dealing with that? Yes, there's a lot of marketing, a lot of we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to do that. But right now, we need to start showing some green shoots, some early fruit that says, we have now dealt with this, this is now going to work like this. We've now dealt with this, this is not. So it is taking a little longer, and the citizenry has run out of patience many moons ago. So there has to be some low-hanging fruit, quick win approach to say, look, we want to do this, let's do with this quickly, out of the way.
The issue of corruption is structural. Government has dissolved the Anti-Corruption Commission. There is a special anti-corruption unit in the President's office that's working with the National Prosecuting Authority. These are things that we could have done very quickly and appointed people. In fact, Parliament has sent out advertisement for people to be seconded to the Anti-Corruption Commission now. The bureaucrats will go through the usual procedure that needs to be taken through, maybe to take the next 4 months, 5 months, or 6 months, whatever, and we don't have a structure sitting there as the Anti-Corruption Commission. Are we doing enough in that regard? You say we have not done anything, we have not scratched corruption. Is the Anti-Corruption Unit in the President's office a good enough structure?
No, I don't. Well, that is also a constitutional. I'm not a lawyer, but that's a constitutional problem in its legality. I don't think that there should be any anti-corruption unit in the president's office. Personally, I don't think that is the right thing. But the fact that we still don't have a Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission in place shows the height we have fallen and the lack of traction. I know that it needs to be revamped in one way or the other. There is a process of hiring new commissioners and so on. But corruption continues to be rife in our environment. So yes, those are things that need to be dealt with very quickly. In some cases, it's a process issue, and maybe the process can be accelerated. And so we need to look at all these things in context of that. But however, I am looking for low-hanging fruit, early fruit, that government has to now start saying, this is what we are now doing. This is what we started off doing at the end of last year or beginning of this year. This is now working. It wasn't working, it's now working. Before and after, simple things. In some cases, we're not talking about things that are rocket science or things that will take a lot of money. It's a behavior, it's a structural issue. It's appointment of certain people in the right places, and so on. So, yeah.
So literally we have square pegs in round holes.
I can't say that. All I'm saying is that there isn't evidence of that we are now moving in the right direction. And that evidence doesn't need me to comment on it. It doesn't need you to comment on it.
True.
It needs the citizen to say, look, there is now progress. I didn't have water running in my tap 6 months ago. I now have water. I was not having even any electricity around here. There is now electricity. Garbage was not being picked. Now garbage is being picked. And those sort of things. I was not employed. There is I haven't been employed for 5 years. I actually found a job. Those are some of the things that you look at. So the measurement isn't like, I don't think that, because for economic indicators and commentators and also political commentators, we look at ballpark figures to say, look, guess what? We want to, we want to grow the economy by 5%. Economic growth in itself is a measurement, but it is not necessarily a translation of changes in lifestyles of the citizen. It doesn't always measure. So we got to look at indicators that will deal with the lifestyles.
We are on Newsroom TV and we are live on newszimbabwe.com. That's our Facebook page. Our Twitter handle is at newszimbabwe.com. We also publish an online newspaper, www.newszimbabwe.com. This is the agenda. We talk here with Dr. Shingi Munyeza, a businessman of note and a political commentator. He usually comments on political issues in our country and social issues affecting our country. So we talk to him and find his thoughts around the political development after November 2017, what he thinks of the business environment, and he thinks government is not done enough. He is not done enough in terms of showing the citizens that there's been a shift from the old dispensation to the so-called new dispensation. There have not been indicators, little indicators that show citizens that something has changed. There has been a shift. That's his argument. So thank you very much for continuing to follow us. Like we indicated, we have Tendai Mazenge. He is also following us. He says Shingi Munyeza thinks ED is the right man to take us out of this mess, yet he is part and parcel of the people that got us to this state. We don't need ED to lead us to prosperity. ED is actually rewarding corrupt friends in his government. I talked about Nomala Kumaro, Nelson Rua. If Shingi becomes president, Zimbabwe will be worse. If really is also following us. So there are comments that are coming in from some of our viewers. Something you are supporting the status quo, something you are neutral, and people always come up with all sorts of
I have no problems with that.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that Zimbabwe has a problem with is that it's either him or me type of approach. I don't think that it is, we are just in a toxic and polarized environment. I have understood that for years now. It doesn't move me nor disturb me.
How do we get out of this?
The only way to get out of this is to get our focus away from personalities
And politics.
and politics, and deal with our issues and gather a momentum that says, you know what, we don't actually need you, Richard, to do what we need to do. And in fact, if you are not doing it correctly, we'll ignore you. The problem is that we get so ecstatic, we get so euphoric, we get so passionate, we get into creating these demigods and say, look, you will take us to the promised land. And we are expecting too much from individuals. Our problems are structural and institutional. So we need to deal with the institutions, we need to deal with the structures, but not to deal with the individuals, because we will forever be removing people from positions. But our issue has been more structural than it has been just individuals.
Okay.
So we swap. We remove you, Richard, we put you there, we bring in another guy. I can tell you, in 2 months, they'll be screaming at you because the problem is structural.
So which structure do we begin? Who begins to do what? If you are given a chance to advise government or to advise citizens, where do we begin?
Paradigm shift. First of all, we need a paradigm shift of making sure we do not expect a Messiah. The issue is that we must not expect an individual Messiah to get us where we are.
Of any political persuasion?
Yes, of any political persuasion. That's why our campaigns are always individualistic. They're never about values. They're never about ourselves. They're never about vision. They're about an individual. So if it is always going to be an individual, you will run the risk, because the individual and the individuals that we find leading us are doing it for completely selfish reasons. These are personal reasons. These are nothing to do with the common man on the street.
Are there Zimbabweans like yourself who are willing to take us through this transformation from looking at things in a myopic and individualistic manner, from looking at positions to looking at institutions, to begin to say what institution is doing what? Can we capacitate it? Are there individuals willing to do that?
I think there is a lot of Zimbabweans like that. What we have been going through in the past 40 years is that those sort of individuals have been pummeled out of shape. They have been threatened with all sorts. So they've kept way under the radar. So they don't want to pop up and say, look, please, I don't want any position here. Let's talk about this. Let's deal with this. For example, some of us continue to work in the system, in the environment. I don't care what people say about my role as a presidential advisor. But there are things that I know now that I would never have known. To be able to come up with solutions for this country. Because everybody thinks if you're not aligned to that one, you're just as bad or as good as that person. Because it's a polarized environment. And people are just toxic that way. But for me, it is just to find relevance to say, look, oh, now I understand why you have not been able to do this. Number one, it is because the whole thing below you is decay, is rotten, or you are incapable. Or you cannot do this, the best way to do it that way. And then you move away from there, you then come up with solutions that can work. I'm involved in this whole reboot fund with Enterprise Zimbabwe,
True.
which we are raising $100 million dollars to rebuild Chimanimani. There is no political involvement of anybody there. It's just business trying to mobilize itself. We have so far raised nearly 40 million. So we keep going there. So the solutions can't always wait until we have one person in a particular office. The momentum must build up.
Oh, by the way, Dr. Shingi Munyeza is a presidential advisor. He's part of the advisor that were set up by President Emerson Mnangagwa. Has he been listening to you? Maybe just
to be honest with you, as an advisor, I don't think that if you call me and you have an issue and I want to help you and your wife as a pastor, and then I should go and tell everybody that, by the way, I met with him, he stopped beating up his wife.
okay.
That is the prerogative that you carry, that, oh, after I met with my pastor, this is what began to happen. But I can't go and tell everybody that, oh, I stopped him from beating his wife. Now we're talking about his finances. No, our advice to the president is confidential to him, and that is how it's supposed to be. However, the processes of what we need to advise, it takes a long process to understand what has been working and what has not been working. So people think we just wake up in his office and start barking at him. I know that there was a whole satire this weekend about where somebody was depicting me and another brother. And that was good humor, and I enjoyed that, and I like that sort of behavior, because then it means that we are softening up. If we can't tolerate satire, we then still have a problem. So my view is that one has to understand what has been working and what has not been working.
And do you now understand what has been working?
It's a journey. We have not even scratched the surface.
Wow.
We're talking about 40 years of things that have been going on, maybe 10 years of things that have been going terribly wrong, and then you've got to give context to this. So the context of advice, the context of approach is not going to even be felt today. People think that we must be writing speeches for the president. We don't do that. That's not part of our brief. No, it's not. It's not even part of our brief. There is an executive. What is amazing that you will find, though, Richard, is that you will find people are expecting much more from PAC than they're expecting from their elected councillors, elected MPs, and cabinet.
Because they think they are closer to power than
No,
those.
we are actually we're not even closer to power. Cabinet meets once a week.
In the PAC?
We meet once every 3 months.
Oh, okay.
So we don't do those sort of things. So cabinet meets once a week. Parliament meets daily. Councils meet every week. So what has happened is that we've also forgotten about how government and institutions of government and our democracy work. And therefore we are no longer holding our councillors to account. So we're expecting another. You see, this is the expectation I was talking about. You're expecting a miracle, a magic wand, a messiah So there's a new tool, or there's a new toy on it, which is called PAC. Yeah, and then you think that they must now run government, they must run this. We only give advice to the extent that you allow me to give you advice. But if it is structural in governance, if it is supposed to be constitutional in terms of feedback, guess what? There is cabinet, and there's a briefing every Wednesday or every Tuesday after a cabinet meeting. There is council minutes and council meetings, which the citizenry must get. There's parliament, there's the answer that people must follow through. No one. Now they think that the two of us who are even on social media, we must actually sort out this problem. And that's how messed up structurally we are. You're now expecting a group of 23, 25, 26 individuals to come together and salvage a situation which is structural.
But that this government allows people like yourselves, picks up a group of individuals to advise the president, that the president has allowed you as ordinary citizens or business person or eminent person from your areas of expertise to come closer to him and say to him, hey, this is probably wrong, hey, this is probably right, you could do this, or you could add that, or subtract that, you could remove that. That I suppose you are allowed to say to the president, this is good or this is bad. Do you give him credit for that? Does that draw the difference between him and the former president?
I think that was a good move, because you find this in America, you find this in Singapore, you find this in Rwanda, you find this in countries that have done well. So the structure is not alien at all. The structure is actually a common practice. But this works also in an environment where the other structures of democracy and governance are also working. So we have to all work together to make sure that we have some semblance. Now, there are people who say, look, either it's a trash and burn. If it is not this, I am going to make sure that everything doesn't work. This goes to this whole behavior that if it's not me, I'm going to destroy it. If it is me, then I must protect it. So we are polarized at that stage. We must be able to get out of this electioneering. I was once talking about the fact that the train moved. The train left of some of the issues we're crying about. There's a semblance that the people out there will think that we must have an election in the next 3 months. We can't have an election in the next 3 months. The only time we'll have an election is 2023. And therefore, that train for elections is moved. So we need to start doing other things now that will prepare us. If you still want to get involved in elections, if you want to participate, then you prepare for them. But for now, it is about nation building, focusing on the issues that need to be focused on. So that is so the train moved. And when the RTGS, people are saying, look at the RTGS, the US dollar, the what has happened to that? People were crying out, say, we want 1:1. We don't want 1:1. I was one of those that was lobbying that the US dollar and the RTGS is not 1:1.
True. And it was not?
It was not. Now it is not. There's a cry that says, well, it's not 1:1, guys. This is what it means. Prices, incomes have to now also be rationalized along the way. So the battle to fix our economy is not a switch. And unfortunately, because we've taken so long to fix our problems, the patience with the ordinary citizenry out there has run out. And that's where the crisis is.
We are still on Newsroom TV, and thank you very much for continuing to follow us. We are with Dr. Shingi Munyeza. He gives us his perspective on what is happening in the country, the political and business environment, the economic and social aspects of our environment. You can find us on newzimbabwe.com. That's our Facebook page. Our Twitter page is newzimbabwe.com. My Twitter page is Chidasachida1, and my Facebook page is Chidasachida. You can also follow our stories on www.newzimbabwe.com. So we continue to talk about this. Dr. Munyeza, you say it's not a switch, it's not going to happen overnight, but the citizenry expects things to happen. Are the powers that be aware that this is the situation that we have on the ground?
In some cases, there is that awareness. But in some cases, there is a semblance of discord, and there is discord. So there is need for alignment to what is the government agenda right now to deliver to the people of Zimbabwe. So that is a process. And I guess it's taking longer than you and me want it to be. And there has to be that alignment. If there is no alignment, we'll still have these mixed voices, mixed messages that keep coming across and confusing. So there has to be a convergence as well as a united approach to saying these are the things that we're going to do and be held accountable. At the moment, it is like firefighting all over the place.
Do you think the way we have dealt with the monetary issues, particularly the new currency, it's a currency, you were one of the advocates for the currency, do you think it's enough for business? Let's talk about business. We are businessmen.
Yeah, this is transitional. And we've got to be very honest with ourselves that we cannot have a currency that is called RTGS dollars. But it's transitional because we're dealing with a legacy issue. The legacy issue is that we went on an overdrive to just print money recklessly. Basically, we robbed the citizen in the process. Government did.
Government robbed.
Yes, because now we are having to deal with these issues in hindsight. And how do we fix it? At that time, there was no need to actually do all those sort of things.
You think it's in the robbing that you talk about is enough for a class action against the government by citizens?
Well, I don't even know what a class action would do, what that class action would be like. But I'm just saying, if there is a semblance that we're now dealing with us, then the pain for dealing. So when government talks about austerity, it must also be austerity that is top to bottom. Everybody, government must be demonstrating, modeling that we are also showing austerity. And I know there is a noise out there in that government is not showing its part of austerity. It's just the citizens that are there. In some cases, I totally agree with it. In some cases, it is how it is being projected, which then causes the noise. So yes, it must be, we have to get into an austerity season that everybody, not some, everybody goes through it.
Is government communicating enough so that citizens, me and my mother and my uncle and my cousin will be part of this? Are we part of the train? Or there is one train for government and one train for the rest of us?
I think that the communication from government has not been the best. I also think that they are now aware of it, and you've seen that they're now communicating soon after every cabinet meeting. So there is some shift there, but to be honest, yes, the communication has been distorted in some cases, and there's been conflicting voices. That needs to be managed because people work through the following. Once there is a clear message, in itself inspires and gives direction. Now, when there is a distortion or a noise in the message, it discourages and gives all sorts of directions which confuses people. So that's where we need to, at least a clarion call of a message that is consistent and on point, that is measuring progress, or that is articulating progress that has been made, or challenges that are being faced. We do not need to sugarcoat our problems because the common person actually feels the problems.
They don't know.
They feel the problem. So you don't need to alert to them that, just in case you didn't know you have a problem. They feel it every day. So what you need to do is to articulate that we know how you're feeling, but this is how we are sorting out this problem. This is how we're dealing with it.
Okay. Maybe going forward, what do you think now? The PAC, maybe just a bit on the PAC. Do you guys meet before you meet the president?
As I said, this is information. I am not a spokesperson for PAC.
Okay.
And I like to leave it out of that sort of conversation because it has its own processes. But I can comment on what government could do or should not do and all that. But the PAC has its own process
structure.
Yeah, structure to do that.
for a businessman like you, what do you expect government to do in the next 4 months or in the next 6 months?
What I'm doing with my businesses is to reposition them, and I'm looking at anything that handles technology.
I see. I've seen that.
Yeah,
You've moved,
yeah. I've shifted my businesses to technology. I've looked at anything that looks at renewable energies. I'm shifting towards entrepreneurial capacitation. I've also looked at anything that leverages on foreign currency earnings or import substitution. Yeah.
So, that's personally for you.
Yeah.
On the policy side, what do you expect of government?
The first thing on business is to get the ease of doing business back on track. We still struggle to really just get companies opened, registered, people who want to invest. Those processes are still very long, and they are sometimes very confusing.
And people asking for money for it.
Yes, so we've been talking about it for months and even years now. We need to get it off the ground and make sure that if people want to invest, they do not take longer than 24 hours to understand what it takes and be able to open all the avenues that need to be opened. So first and foremost, ease of doing business is paramount here, so that at least we can process investment at a quicker pace.
And you think this economy can be turned around? How long will it take at this rate, at this pace?
This economy can be turned around. I am confident it will be. Let me just give it to you for my own self. If I didn't feel that it was going to be turned around, I wouldn't start new businesses in this country. I wouldn't invest in new businesses in this country. It will be a waste of money. But because I am convicted and convinced that it will turn around. How long? In my own estimation, because of the investment horizon I've given, I should start having some good early fruit in the next 3 years, because I'm a long-term investor. Yeah.
So you would actually urge other investors to put in money into this economy?
Oh yes, there's every potential that is here. Whether you're talking about resource-based investment, or whether you're talking about service-based, whether you're talking about agro-based, there is just that we are caught up in a fireball of politics and quarreling and distortions and disunity, disturbances and discouragements that are going on, and we're not focusing on some of the opportunities that this market has.
But we can't not focus on politics when the president was already been identified as the next candidate for the next election, and the opposition has already identified its own candidate, and they are already campaigning for the next election, which is probably 4 or 5 years away.
Ignore them.
Ignore them.
I don't get too animated by anymore about who's going to be the next MP, the next president of this party. I'm not animated by that. I'm much more animated about what can I do, what sort of value can I bring to the common man in the street through my businesses, through my church ministry, and through my own personal efforts as a philanthropist.
And businesses in Zimbabwe continue to declare profits. I've been watching. I'm not a business reporter, but I watch them declare profits. They declare profits after tax or before tax or stuff like that, and some declare dividend, but still complain that there is no money in this country.
Oh, well, there is money. Let me just say. The market has shrunk. The common man has no liquidity. And I think that is where the conversation is at. But the opportunities have not dried away. Okay. The opportunities to do business in this country have not. In fact, the entry barrier is very low at this point. If you went into any sector, you could start a business. The entry barriers are very low. But it is because we are still caught up in politicking and the noise and so on and so forth, and the policy distortions that probably continue to be there. We're crying there. But for real entrepreneurs, and I'm one, I've found my niches there, and I'm moving with them.
Your last words as a pastor, not as a businessman, as my pastor. your last words to Zimbabweans, to people like me who are so desperate for a better day.
I'd like to say for fellow Zimbabweans is that we have fought for too long. We have allowed personalities to divide us. And we need to refocus, change our paradigm, and begin to look at what is within ourselves that we can share together. I look at the recent Cyclone Idai disaster. It gave me a lot of, it was a sweet and sour, Richard. Sour in the lives that were lost, the livelihoods that were lost, the devastation of infrastructure. But the sweetness about it is that there was a hope, a ray of hope that we can actually go beyond our own little fights and focus on one another. Everybody coming together to help the other person and to work together without being driven by politics or politicians. And what was amazing is that politicians went there and came back and went back and so on. The people were not animated anymore about the politicians. They were more caught up in how do we fix lives that have been broken and that have been destroyed. I'll be going there this week or next week as we start this whole reboot fund and look at how do we build better, how do we rebuild better, how do we rebuild better the homes that have been destroyed, how do we rebuild better the infrastructure that has been destroyed, but more importantly, how do we rebuild better the lives that have been shattered, those who have lost loved ones. So we're looking at that model, and it has nothing to do with what I get out of it. It is more to how do I give to my fellow Zimbabweans, and how do I make sure that, and there is that God-given gift in us. It's not lost yet. So my parting shots is that there is that which says, when we have removed our political jackets, our political aspirations, and our political alignments, there is a place we call Zimbabwe within ourselves. And there is a value that talks about you and me as brothers, and or brother and sister, or sister and sister. That doesn't have to be that we have to throw things at each other, abuse one another, quarrel with one another, but just embrace one another in our differences, embrace one another in our diversities, and look forward to a better Zimbabwe where our differences do not become the major point of conjecture. Our diversities cause us to celebrate more than we should just say, this is for this one and this is for that one. And I'm talking ultimately about the unity of Zimbabweans, and that Zimbabweans are one by what God has defined us to be. And there is so much we can give to each other as a first stance, but there is so much we can give to the rest of the world. We are a blessed people, and we need to acknowledge that. God bless you.
Dr. Munyeza, thank you very much. I got a bit a heart skip when he says fellow Zimbabweans, because I remember that word being used in November 2017. Well, this has been the agenda. Thank you very much for having joined us on the program. We were talking to Dr. Munyeza, a philanthropist, and he is going back to Chimanimani. We commiserate with the people who lost their lives and those that had their lives shattered in Chimanimani due to Cyclone Idai. So, like I said, we were watching the agenda on newszimbabwe.com, on Newzim TV. We come to you every Monday, and for now we close the program today. So you can follow us on Twitter at newszimbabwe.com. On our Facebook page. Let's continue to talk about these and other issues. It's newszimbabwe.com, or read our stories on our online newspaper. That's www.newszimbabwe.com. My personal Facebook page is Chizasachidza, or my Twitter handle is at Chizasachidza1. Follow us again next week when we bring in another guest, or give us an idea of the guest that you would want us to bring. This is your program, so it is made for you. Thank you very much, and bye-bye for now.